everybody? Welcome to another Route Consultant Weekly webinar. For those of you who may be here for the first time, my name is Josh Gregory. I'm the VP of Education here at Route Consultant. If you've never run into us, our team ran hundreds of routes across the country in both P&D and Linehaul. And today we're really here to help new buyers looking into getting into the space for the first time, and also importantly, to always help contractors understand everything that's going on in the market, help them find efficiencies and additional profitability in your business. For everybody who's here every week, welcome back. And whether you're brand new or you're here every week, we always want this to be a place where we can come together, ask questions, and learn from each other. Before I go too much farther, though, I do have a quick disclaimer to read, as I do every week. So Route Consultant is not endorsed by and is not recommended by Federal Express Corporation, FedEx Ground, or Amazon. Route Consultant is not sponsored by, is not approved by, is not associated with, and has no connection whatsoever with Federal Express Corporation, FedEx Ground, or Amazon. Now, all that to say, like I said, we're going to go over content today, and there's going to be a point at the end for Q&A. And so any questions that you may have, whether it's something that we talk about today or anything you have about the space as a whole, myself and my co-host will be on later to answer those questions. So you can wait till the end to type in any questions, or you, as we're talking, feel free to type those in, and at the end, we'll make sure to address them. Now, again, actually, as a reminder too, Q&A, make sure you put it in the Q&A button at the bottom. It's a little button at the bottom of the window. If you put it in the chat, I'm going to miss it. So ideally, put it in that Q&A button at the bottom of the window. But before that, we do have some content we want to talk about. And one of the biggest challenges and most important focuses on the line haul side needs to be your employees. You don't get any revenue if you don't have drivers, and you can't grow in this industry if you can't find ways to continue to bring in top talent. And importantly, you also want to do everything you can to retain that talent. So today we get to have a fun conversation with both Alex Froome, who's a current line haul contractor with runs across the country, and Toni Tovi from BrightFlag Recruiting. So I see both of you. You can both jump on and say hi to everybody, and then we'll get started.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, excited to be here.
Perfect. So Alex, I'll kick it over to you to kind of take it from here, and we'll keep going.
Awesome. So, Toni, thank you for joining us. I know we've had lots of conversations over the past 5 or 6 years about recruiting, and I know we've worked in the past, so I thought it would be awesome to have you on board here since you have the pulse on the entire market across the country. So what I wanted to talk about today is not only talking about pay structures, but also retention, because at the end of the day, the less recruiting that you actually have to do, the more profitable your business is going to be and more stable it is. So if you can get into a situation where you're doing very little recruiting, you're in a good situation. And that all boils down to what I think are a number of different areas. One is pay, obviously. Then you have your bonus structures, your benefits. And then I think what the fun part of it is the swag that you give out to your drivers. So, while I think the mantra should always be recruiting, kind of like the ABCs of Glengarry Glen Ross, or of Alec Baldwin and that skit on Saturday Night Live. I mean, the ABRs are very important. If you can avoid being in that recruiting bucket, you're serving yourself well. So when I look at it for my own company, what I try to achieve is I try to keep payroll around 1/3 of my overall gross revenue. So some people look at it as differently, and they want to look at net revenue after you take your fuel out. I look at it as gross because it's just an easier number. So, and I try to keep it somewhere between 33 and 38% of my total revenue. And I keep that as both pay and benefits. So, and because of the way FedEx pays, it's a little bit different from spot to spot on the country of what that gross revenue number is and then what that pay rate is. I mean, so what do you see, Toni, when you're looking, across the country nationally?
Yeah, if you want like just a national average and not market by market, which we could totally get granular into, and like I love to geek out on those numbers and statistics. But if you're looking at average, and we're just talking about solo specifically, I would say we're seeing about 60 to 70 cents per mile. And then for the team drivers, you're looking at about 72 to 85 cents per mile, which, Alex, is like mind-blowing to me, because when we started working together, I think it was like in 2018, I think we were paying teams running out of Noki like 55 cents a mile split. or thereabouts, like 55 to 58. I think if we got to like 60 cents, we were like, oh my God, we're bleeding. You know what I mean? And like the fact that like we're posting jobs now at 85 cents a mile split just like blows my mind. Like we would have had such a cakewalk if one, we had the margins back then to offer 85 cents a mile, and two, we could have like it would have been shooting fish in a barrel.
Yeah.
Like Noki wouldn't have been the hardest market to recruit out of if we could have said, hey, 85 cents a mile for team and 70 cents a mile solo, right? Uh,
Yeah.
and then, if you're talking, that's for cents per mile. And plus they're getting like, and we can go into this later to your second point, but they're getting that. And then we're also telling them, hey, plus you're getting like a daily fuel and safety incentive if like our clients offer that, which most of them are these days to stay competitive in the market. But then we also see people offering, daily rates and then per hour and breaking it down that way. So there's 1,000 ways to skin this cat, and it's going to be really specific to like your market and your unique, offerings and like your runs. If you're doing a lot of spots, like it may be more conducive to pay per hour, or to pay just like a daily rate, and that they're going to do X amount of spots per day. So there's 1,000 ways that you can do it. But I see hourly pay more in positions where drivers are shuttling trailers, they are running local spots, and also like if they're in a really high traffic area, where they know that the traffic's going to keep them from attaining enough miles to make the position worthwhile, they have to do that hourly rate to stay competitive, because no one's going to do a short mile run if they're also sitting that entire time in traffic just to get from like spot A to spot B. So.
Yeah, I mean, a good rule of thumb, if you want to think about it on the hourly side, is typically it's a third of the spot is what you're paying out. And that really equates to somewhere between 30 to $35 an hour, which when you think about it on a cents per mile basis is where you're also going to be on a cents per mile basis for somebody who's driving in that range. You look at the numbers that Toni just mentioned, between 60 and 70 cents for solos, and 70 to 80 cents for teams. I mean, that all breaks down to, when you take it all the way back down, to somewhere between that 30 to 35. And what you're going to notice, at least in my experience, is that, the high cost states is where you're going to have higher pay. So you're thinking New York, California, Oregon, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Illinois. Those are all relatively higher cost states. Some other states are more challenging to recruit in because of the environment there, but it's not usually a pay issue. It's just more trying to find drivers who want to be on the road, and are willing to give up, certain lifestyle choices like Denver or Oregon. You do have an issue with with THC in those states, so you have to be careful. But yeah, on the hourly, what I typically see in my experience is that hourly is all about the spots or drivers who are working in that 150-mile air radius. And so they're really not subject to the hours of service like a typical over-the-road driver. And those are where you're seeing a lot of the hourly wages or the day rate. The one thing to keep in mind, I would say, with the day rate is that at the end of the day, you still have to report it as an hourly or as a cents per mile rate. You're not allowed to pay a driver a day rate. Otherwise, you violate Department of Labor and Department of Transportation rules. So you have to break it back down, and you have to account for it in either an hourly or a cents per mile. And then the other thing to remember is that some states do require you to do hourly, and you can't do cents per mile. I think Washington State is one where you are required by law to do hourly. Oops, you okay there? Uh, and then if you're doing hourly, the one thing to remember is that over the road drivers are exempt from overtime rules. So that's something to keep in mind. Though I would really highly recommend contacting an hour and labor wage lawyer to make sure that you are dotting all your I's and crossing all your T's in those states where you decide to do hourly wages. Just make sure you talk to a lawyer to make sure you're in the right bandwidth there.
Yeah.
Bonus.
I was
Yeah,
going to say, just to add to that, Alex, like you're spot on. So any of my clients that are like just coming in that want to offer that daily rate, or that daily rate, I just tell them to break it down hourly, because that's going to save them a lot more than trying to break it down in a cents per mile. And then some drivers just want that transparency. If they're like running 8 hours or 10 hours a day, they want to know, like, what does this break down to me for me? And so I give them like best case, worst case. So we'll just take like the average, right? And say, okay, best case scenario, you're done in 7.5 hours. This is how much you're making hourly based on this daily rate, right? And then if you're on the like the tail end of that, it's going to break down to X. And so they get that range to know, okay, like this is what I'm making where thereabouts on an hourly basis. And then when they're reporting it, it really keeps them in compliance, to your point. So cents per mile gets really, really tricky to do if you're doing a daily rate. So I just tell everybody to err on the side of caution, to your point, on the just break it down hourly. So
Okay, bonus structures. So I'll tell you what I do for myself, and then we can talk about what you see in the market. So I pay $100 bonus for all the FedEx observed holidays. So FedEx acknowledges certain holidays and they ignore other ones. I don't know why they do it this way, but they do. So FedEx acknowledges Memorial Day, the 4th of July, Labor Day, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's, but they still require you to work on those days. They just happen to acknowledge them, and they usually or historically have given an incentive bonus out to contractors to pay their drivers to have them work on those days. So what I typically do is I pass along the incentive pay, and then on top of that, I pay out $100 bonus to all the drivers. So whether they're working or not, because what you'll find more often than not is we'll run on that holiday, and then the day afterwards, there's a drop in freight because no businesses are open and there's no pickup of packages going on, so nothing runs on that day. So that $100 is kind of to make up for the fact that they're missing out on a day and they're working on the holiday. And then on top of that, I typically do a $200 monthly safety bonus to my drivers for following the rules and procedures of my company, completing their safety training on time, and having no safety violations. And then lastly, I usually do an annual, you can call it a retention bonus, you can call it a holiday bonus, you can call it whatever you do want to call it. I pay something typically. I've gone back and forth. Some years I do it before Christmas, and some years I've done it after Christmas. I've tried to see what the drivers prefer, and it's some prefer it before, some prefer it afterwards. So I just go back and forth on it. Typically, that's somewhere between $500 to $600 a driver is what I typically pay.
yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I think paid holidays is like the number one. Like time is the most valuable thing, right? So anything that you can incentivize them with to give them back more time or to compensate them for time that they're spending on the road is always a win-win. So it's like kind of the low-hanging fruit, always. A big one that we always see is fuel incentives. So fuel incentives, for people that are new to this, I'll just explain it. If you know it, you know it. But it's for filling up at preferred stations, which saves the contractor money, thereby increasing profits, which are then passed down to the driver in the form of an extra cents per mile. So we see that a lot for fuel incentives. And then also a big one is the safety bonus. I mean, that helps you, it helps them, it helps your safety score. Like it just, all in all, like safety bonuses to me are the most important thing to incentivize, because like you want that safety culture. It is really demonstrative and like can be really hard on you and your bottom line if you get in an accident. And so having them have that safety forward thinking constantly, and then being incentivized on top of that to get it, that safety bonus, just helps everybody be moving in the right direction. And so safety bonuses, we've seen it typically between 1 to 3 cents per mile added to the base pay, of the percentage of miles driven, such as like 1% of quarterly miles. Or to your point, Alex, you can see that like as a lump sum, which would be like, around $200 to $300, $400 per month that they get, for adhering to all the safety protocols that you deem as part of that incentive plan. Let's see, retention bonuses, definitely for sure. I think that another big one for bonus structures is referral bonuses. I think that it is the most underutilized bonus structure out there. It kind of puts me out of a job if it's done the right way. But if we're talking about what is best for the client, which me and BrightFlag and our entire team always tries to think first and foremost as being former contractors, is like, what can we do to create the best culture? And that's taking like your A-level, your A-team players and trying to duplicate that, right? And so having that referral bonus is going to be one of the best bonus structures. I mean, not bonus structures, and plans that you can have in place. That's just going to affect the bottom line. Because if you're not having to spend money, recruiting on these different ad platforms, paying someone like me or paying somebody internally to do that. And you're just getting free people that are like-minded. I mean, that's just a win-win for sure. Trying to think of what else we have. So we got retention. Oh, and then there's another bonus, which is not my favorite bonus, but is a necessary evil sometimes, is sign-on bonuses. So
Yeah, I haven't, it's kind of interesting. Like during the pandemic, I started using sign-on bonuses and then kind of walked away from it because it was just, one, you don't really need them right now. The market's pretty available, but two, I found what I got was a lot of drivers who just jump ship after every 6 months. So I agree with you, like the referral bonus is huge, and I'm a big fan of referral bonuses. I usually structure it where half gets paid out after 90 days and the other half gets paid out after 180 days, so that that referee is with me for 180 days. But I've moved away from the sign-on bonuses and I don't do them anymore. And I stopped them probably mid-pandemic because what I saw was you get these drivers who are looking for an extra penny and would come over to you from another contractor and be like, well, what's my sign-on bonus? And
yeah.
and you'd say it and they'll be like, okay, great. And then, sure enough, on day 181, they're jumping ship and going to another contractor.
Oh, it was a bidding war. I mean, it was like I wanted to see how high the ceiling could go. So let's play a fun game real quick, if you don't mind me commandeering this.
Mhm.
But what was the highest sign-on bonus you saw during the pandemic?
The highest sign-on bonus I ever paid was $1,000, and I stopped pretty quick, which
Okay.
was hard for me. Which, but the highest one I saw some guys listing $10,000 sign-on bonuses.
Okay.
I know that US Express at one point had a $20,000 sign-on bonus.
That's what I was going to go with. Was 20
Yeah,
was the highest. In the FedEx space, though, I saw him as high as 10,000. And I
yeah.
thought to myself, how the heck do they have the money to pay? Like, where's the money coming from? But then I realized they were doing it over a year. And you and I both know, like, I mean, we hope that people are going to last for a year, but back during those times, it was like crazy, Book of Eli type of situation. So, people, if they lasted 6 months, we were like, oh, win-win, like the wheels were turning, like we're making money. So I don't think people ever got to the point, like, especially if they structured it out the right way, so they didn't lose their head. It was portioned out and structured out in a way to where they weren't getting it like the biggest chunk of that payout until they hit like that 9 month, 12-month mark. And if they really weren't in it to like win it, like they didn't ever get that, So the most you lost was in that like 30, 60 day,
Yeah.
90-day payout period. But yeah, I mean, I'm not a huge fan of sign-on bonuses. They're a necessary evil when it's like dire straits. The best counter to that, to what you were saying earlier, is the retention.
Yeah.
Rewarding people that you want to continue to keep on your team. Because why
Yeah.
not?
That's a big one for me. And I think, where it really comes down and where it really makes a big difference is when you look at like the turnover in your business. So I did some analysis the other day getting prepped for this. I have 47 employees right now. I have 35 of them who've been with me for over 4 years.
That's amazing.
So, and a lot of it comes down to not the bonuses as much because the bonuses come and go. And, as much as the drivers appreciate the little bit of extra money, I never get like that thank you, like, oh, this made such a huge deal to me. This is kind of like an expectation. Where I do get the thank yous from are like the benefits. And then what we'll talk about next after this is the swag. But the benefits are a big deal because once you get the benefits and you get a driver to sign up for the benefits and they get used to utilizing your benefits, then it's really hard for them to leave. So, like medical, I offer all my drivers healthcare, company sponsor. I pick up 69% of the healthcare. They have to pay up, for them just 31% on their own. I offer dental and vision. I offer life insurance. And the big one that my drivers really, really like is short-term disability. Um, so those are all big ones. And I had two drivers who had cancer this past year. And they both took advantage of the short-term disability and the health insurance, and it made a big difference. They were looking at something that could have been multi-$1,000s, and it saved them a bunch of money, but because they had health insurance. But it also leads to having healthier drivers where you're going to have less opportunity for them to get sick. If they're going to, if they have a general practitioner that they can go see on a regular basis, instead of either going to the emergency room and having to pay that a massive amount of money for going to emergency room, one, your drivers are going to be healthier. because they're not putting things off until the last moment when it becomes catastrophic. But two, it just creates a better workforce for you. And then you have these drivers who get used to having, oh, I have my prescriptions and it only costs me $20 out of pocket, and I can go get my dentist and I can go get my eyesight and get short-term disability. All these things lead to like drivers saying, I don't want to leave Alpha Kilo because, maybe they have really good benefits over at Joe Schmo Trucking, but I don't know what those benefits are, and I don't know how to navigate those benefits. And trust me, the one thing my wife hates is every single time I train health insurance companies, she's like, oh, I got to learn a new process to like pay bills and schedule doctor's appointments to stay with the last one. So it becomes a huge inertia, and drivers will stick with you because of it.
Yeah. And to that point, that is such a valid point that you made. And I just want to dig into that. It's great to offer all these things, but what's more important is to back that up with the education, right? Because you can offer these incredible plans, but if you're not like leading that horse to water, it falls on deaf ears. Like they don't know what to do with it. I mean, I'm not savvy on all things like medical insurance. I don't understand. I mean, I understand high level, like why short-term disability is important or accidental insurance is important, but I don't understand like how it could like specifically protect me in the moments, and like what are the things that could happen where it's directly correlated to something in my realm of possibilities, and why that's important and why I need that. And like, what is the cost benefit of doing that? And like, is it worth the extra $7 a month? And so just having somebody that, whoever's your provider, and even it sounds like it's you, Alex, is the one that's educating the people, but having a provider that educates your drivers on what is important, what is the most necessary, and how these things can benefit them, no pun intended, is like really the value add there. Because you could have a crappy plan and someone's selling it all day and that's not going to help them. Or you could have the best plan in the entire world with the lowest deductible, and if they don't know how to utilize it, they're not gonna. And so if you want that to be a point of stickiness, to make someone want to stay with your company over Joe Schmo offering 2 more cents per mile, then you do have to take that extra time to educate them on that. So brilliant on that. So yeah, I mean, let's go with the basics really quick, high level across what we're seeing in the US is medical, dental, vision, life insurance. A big one, and then going to that is short-term accidental insurance, all of that, right? Another benefit is PTO, to your previous point. So you do paid holidays. How is the PTO accrued? Are they getting an average to 5 to 10 days annually, 3 to 4 days semi-annually? Can they accrue more the longer they're with your company? What does that look like? Because for me, that is a huge selling point as a recruiter, is to dig into. And if people can't offer, like some of these companies are so small, right? They can't offer all of these like grandiose, amazing benefit plans. But what's the low-hanging fruit? Time off. Like you can easily give people more time, right? And so if you can't win with the insurance piece, you can certainly win with more PTO days or paid holidays and things like that. So I always put that in front of my clients to say, okay, I understand like the margins aren't conducive for you offering this, but like, why don't we pivot here? And then the big one, especially for people over 30 that are like thinking about the future, is 401k, right? 401k and 401k match. When BrightFlag started, I couldn't offer 401k, so I thought, but I could. I actually really could, and it wasn't expensive. Where it's a little bit more expensive is 401k match. And like I had to crawl before I walked, but I thought it was an all or nothing. I thought I had to do 401k match with 4%, or I couldn't offer it at all. And now it's not true. So you can take baby steps and just offer the 401k. And then when you get a little bit more in your pocket and it's conducive to the environment of what you're making, yes, then you can offer it with match and make it more sticky that way. But 401k is amazing. And I think it's one of the most underutilized benefit option out there.
Yeah.
Because people aren't savvy in it. They don't know.
I agree. I mean, it does take a lot of education on my part and my HR manager's part, but I find it very valuable to like educate them. And I think one of the reasons, so I'll be honest, I am not the highest paid contractor or highest paying contractor in any of my terminals. I'm actually probably in the bottom third, but I have really good benefits. And once I explain how good my benefits are to my employees, they really start to appreciate it. And so they're willing to forgive. Like, for example, I mean, I just went through an acquisition where I bought a company where that was paying their drivers 72 cents a mile. I don't pay anywhere close to that. I pay closer to 60 cents a mile. So I made it very strong. I made it very clear to them. I said, look, I appreciate that this is what you were being paid. You're not going to get paid that. You're going to get put into a brand new truck as opposed to being in a 9-year-old truck. So that's one thing. And then two, you're going to get all these benefits. And, I walked them through like healthcare, dental, vision, short-term disability, life insurance, 401k with a company match. Oh, and I'm going to grandfather you in because you guys each had over 4 years of experience with your previous company, and you're going to be on my PTO program, which is 12 days of PTO annually. So because of that, the drivers took a pay cut, but they're extremely happy. They're driving automatic, brand new vehicles. They're not dealing with a truck that's constantly breaking down and belching diesel. They like the benefits. They all bought into my benefits program. And they seem to be extremely happy because I did the acquisition in March and they're still with me, so it's been great.
Yeah, well, that just speaks to the culture of your organization, Alex. And I've always known Alpha Kilo to just be who they said they were going to be from the beginning. It's never been a bait and switch. Hey, I'm going to give you this sweet daytime run, and you try to sell them this PM solo run, or I got these sweet 6,000 miles going from Atlanta to Tracy, and then all of a sudden it's unassigned, and they're going to freaking Salt Lake City, and they're like freaking out because they don't know if they have change in their tires, and they're used to running parallel and north. Yeah, like no, Alpha Kilo is amazing that way. And I think that if people focused on all of these things that we previously discussed, plus trying to like think about like who they want to be as a culture of an organization, like that's going to help like make all of these things worthwhile, because you're spending money doing these things, right? To try to have a better retention and hire the right people from inception, kind of like a good to great, get the right people in the seats from the beginning, right? But if you don't have the follow up with that, if you don't have good training programs, if you don't have good managers, if you don't have a good culture, if you don't care about these people, like all of that's kind of for nothing, because eventually they're going to tire of it and they're going to go looking somewhere else. And the people that always want a cent per mile more, 2 cents per mile more, or whatever, they're always going to jump ship. There's nothing you can do about that. But the people that actually are in it to win it, and like they want to belong to a good company, and they want that camaraderie and that culture, like the fact that you're constantly working on cultivating that from within, Alex, it just speaks volumes, and you can see it, with your retention. You just can't. I mean, like that doesn't lie.
So let's talk about my favorite part about being an employer and
I'm
working with
glad you
my.
asked.
So it's all about the swag. So some of the things that I do personally is like, for example, all my safety vests, and I have a safety vest here, say Alpha Kilo on them. So they're a big walking advertisement for my drivers. So but my managers constantly get calls from my drivers walking around saying, "Hey, I see your guys walking around with your vest. Got any jobs?" And another thing that I do is, okay, let me work on being technologically savvy here. But every year I do swag for my drivers. And this year I'm doing jackets for a Truck Driver Appreciation Week. And in the past, I've done hoodies, I've done jackets, I've done slick raincoats, I've done bomber jackets. So it's something that I believe very strongly. And my drivers always ask, like, what's going to be this year? What are you doing? What are we going to get? And then the last thing I do is in February, and I'm going to make a plug for a FedEx customer. So there's a company called Nebraska Star Beef. And I buy 4 pounds of beef from them every year, or 4 pounds of beef per driver every year. And I give them usually 4 pounds of New York strip steak or T-bones or tomahawks, whatever. But I give it to all my drivers after peak to say, hey, we did a great job. We had a successful peak, no accidents. Thank you for making, Alpha Kilo great. And keep up the good work. And I have to tell you, I get probably 20 to 30 photos of my drivers cooking up those steaks and serving them. And it's great. They really, really appreciate getting the steaks. So, think about the swag, think about what you can do. I've done sunglasses, hats, backpacks, water, coffee mugs. One of my drivers was suggesting doing coolers, so I might do coolers one day. So think about what you can do for your drivers to show appreciation for them. And trust me, you'll get a lot of thank yous and a lot of appreciation for this. Whereas you give them $100 or $200, you might not get anything, but you give them the swag, they are overwhelmed by it and they really appreciate it. Toni, go ahead, take it away. What do you got?
Well, I'm wearing this really phenomenal hat that I wish that I could take credit for. It says truckers' lives matter, because they do. I mean, we're all talking about line haul truck drivers here, and P&D drivers matter too, just in case you guys are watching out there in the P&D world. You guys totally matter, because they have to start somewhere, right? And then they become line haul drivers. So anywho, but this is awesome, and every time I go to a line haul event, whether it's women in trucking or veterans in trucking, or I'm doing anything, I wear these truck driving hats and that Realm created, because they're amazing. And people are like, where can I get that? Drivers stop me on the street, if I'm like at the mall, or I mean, malls don't exist anymore, but if I'm at a restaurant, uh, and they want to know like where I got that hat. And so people like swag, and they like swag that means stuff. And so I think Realm put on the back of this like their contact information, but like the hat itself is like anybody can wear it. It's not like a walking advertisement. So it's just cool, and it like matters to them, and it means something. Let me fix my hair here for a second, because I am a woman. But for BrightFlag, we are a walking advertisement, but it's got, the BrightFlag logo. But what's really cool on the back is we stole this from Dunkin' Donuts. But it says America runs on trucking, and so people see the back of that and they're like, oh, I love that. I'm a truck driver. How do I get one of those shirts? And so we'll give these shirts out to our clients to give to their drivers, because they love swag. Something that's like specific to like OTR drivers is like, and this is like so easy to buy and people like are obsessed with them, is air fryers. I know that's gonna like blow people's mind. People love air fryers. Like you can heat like your pizza up, your fries, your wings, like whatever, and they're like $50, $40. You put those in a truck, people will eat it up. No pun intended there. Just like punny today. But anyway, air fryers, they're amazing. Low hanging fruit, get them. People be so excited about it. And then another one that drivers ask for, because we take these polls, because we talk to like tens of thousands of drivers a year, quality headsets. Quality headsets are so important to drivers. Like, and I think it helps with safety, because they're not like futzing with it and they're trying to like figure out how to make it work. So like having good communication and not having to worry about like if it's like glitching out or whatever, that's a really good thing that you can buy them. And then something that a contractor told me a long time ago that they did, Adam from DMG Go, he did this with his AFP people, is he creates experiences. So people basically on their team get bucketed into tiers, like your A team, your B team, and your C team. And like they have basically certain things that they can get, like experiences that they can earn. And so it could be like a date night with their wife, or it could be like a trip to wherever, or like a bowling night, or something that's like specific to where they live. Because to your point about the $100, $200 gift card, they think of us as owners and they're like, oh, their pockets are so deep. They have unlimited money. Oh, they only gave us $200. So when you put a monetary attachment to it like that, people aren't as appreciative, because it could always be more in their eyes. They don't know what they don't know. They don't know our overhead, right? But if you give them an experience, something that they probably wouldn't think to do themselves, or they don't take the time to go do themselves, well, then that's thoughtful and that resonates. And then that experience is like, wow, my company bought me an experience to go do something, whatever that experience was, no matter how little or how big. Maybe they went and did a whiskey tasting, because like one of your drivers is like a big whiskey person, or whatever, a hot sauce tasting if they live in a Texas or something, whatever it may be. Experiences go a long way with people. And then I suggested this to a P&D client. They were in, where were they in? Oh, they were in Virginia. Not Virginia, I'm sorry, Burlington, Vermont. And their drivers were always complaining about how cold it was in the trucks. And so I said, go to Costco and go spend 40 or $50, get those hand warmers, give them to them, like give them a little care package. So they got them new coats, and they got them hand warmers, and they all got them like those little hats that have like the little earmuffs that were like blue. So it like fit into like the whole scheme of like FedEx Ground. And they gave them to them like a little bag. And people thought like that was the most greatest grandiose gesture. You would have thought like they won the lottery, just because someone was being thoughtful about a pain point that they were having to deal with on a day-to-day basis. During the summertime, I've seen my contractors, and this is my suggestion, but they went and got those like little cooling things that go over their neck that have like the little AC, and some of them even do like water. And so like when they're out there in like all of this heat, knocking out 200 stops, they have this like little fan that's like portable and like can be charged in their car. And like that makes their job like easier and more sustainable. And like maybe they burn out a little bit less and people care about them. So there's like so many things you can do with swag. I mean, you can brand it, you can just get things that are applicable to like their day-to-day pain points. I mean, there's so many things you can do, but I think at the end of the day, as long as you're doing something that shows them that you care, I think that speaks volumes. And that's going to be the difference of them staying with you or going to the next guy that's offering a little bit more money. And Alex, you are a testament to that. So
Tony, that's nice of you. Before
well,
we go,
they paid me to say it.
yeah, before we go to questions, before Josh pitches us on some deals that are out there. And like I said, I mean, I just bought, so I'm still looking to acquire and grow. I think the market's great right now. Two things I want to talk to you about for current contractors. One, you should be receiving emails this week from your terminal or hub managers with your cap cards. Make sure you get those into your trucks by June 24th. These are the cap cards that say Federal Express Corporation. You need to pull out your FedEx Ground ones and replace them with these Federal Express Corporation. And then the other thing is for our Vetter cameras. FedEx just announced that we're moving to a new KI parameter, and we're going to be initializing new technology, which is MV plus AI. So I have no idea what MV stands for. The AI stands for artificial intelligence. And what effectively this means is that your camera is going to be able to talk to your driver. So if they see a driver not wearing a seatbelt, the camera will be wear a seatbelt, wear a seatbelt. And vice versa. If you're speeding, it's going to say slow down, slow down. And so if your driver adheres to what they're hearing on the camera, you'll pass the KI and you won't get dinged with it. And you have a certain amount of time to follow those instructions. So each one is different based off of the 4 or 5 different metrics that you have. So we're going to learn more information over the next 3 months as we implement this. In the meantime, during this period, KIs for your safety results summary and safety results indicators are being moved down from a 23-point failure to a 5-point failure. And then the last part of this is that they've added an additional KI or key indicator. So we have speeding, we have using a handheld device, we have not wearing a seatbelt and following distance, and they've added camera obstruction. So you're no longer sure you're going to get in trouble and get a key indicator failure if you have either your forward facing or your rear facing cameras obstructed. Take it away, Josh.
Perfect. Oh, and the MV for anybody who actually cares is machine vision. Yeah. So I'm going to go over some listings and events, but we will have an open Q&A in just a second. So if you have questions, like Joseph, I see your hand raised. If you have questions for the Q&A, put it in the little Q&A button at the bottom of the window, and we'll get to those in just a second. So 3 new listings this week. We had 3 P&D listings come up for sale this week. So one out of Michigan, it's 9 routes at $650,000. So it's got 11 employees and a manager, and it is all the vehicles come free and clear. Manager that's going to support this one, just like what we were talking about. This is one on the P&D side. It's much rarer on the P&D side than Linehaul, but this one has health insurance and a 401k match. So we don't see those that often, but if you're hearing these benefits and looking to get into P&D, that is one that has it. Next one's out of New Hampshire. It's 10 routes at $400,000. This one has a manager as well, full-time, who's there to help with everything and some spare trucks. So if you're looking to get into New Hampshire, it's a lower price point. And the last one we have is Pennsylvania, 5 routes at $665,000. This is a really high margin business. It's pretty small, but still has a manager and can justify that with the margins they're throwing off. It's a really dense, low mileage operation. So those are our 3 new listings: Pennsylvania, New Hampshire, and Michigan. If you have questions on any of those, feel free to reach out. Also, just as a reminder on the event side, the big one that we are always pushing right now is we've got the expo coming up. So our big contractor expo that we do every year is coming up the first week of August, and it's in Dallas, Texas. Whether you've been before or you haven't, it's a great time. You'll see everybody who's on the webinar right now there, and it's completely free to attend. It's something that we created so that you can come together, learn, find out everything that's happening in the industry, and get a lot of fun food, a lot of fun drinks and entertainment while you're there too, and then really get a chance to just network with people across the country. Only thing is to make sure that you go ahead and book those hotel rooms, because we do have a hotel block with a discount and it will sell out. So go ahead and lock those in sooner rather than later. But besides that, we can go to Q&A. I don't see any that have come in yet, but I know I have a couple really quick. So, Toni first, when you're thinking about and the recruiting side, as people are thinking about getting into the market, where would you kind of point to as maybe some of the hardest markets to recruit in, just for people to be aware of?
This is going to be unpopular with Alex because he's there, but I'm not a huge fan of the Olive Branch and Memphis area. There is just so much opportunity that it just makes it really challenging. And I just feel like I'm always like in a bidding war when I'm talking to drivers. They're like, well, this guy said he'd pay me this, and this guy said he'd pay me that. And you just have people just trying to like, just one up. And so it's really hard to like find those diamonds in a rough, like the ones that are like really just like wanting a home. And so like you have to spend a lot more time on the front end, like trying to understand like their motivation and like why they're looking to make a change. And those things are all doable, but it's a lot more time consuming. So like super, super saturated markets where you have not only like a ton of FedEx opportunity there, but you just have a ton of other, transportation opportunities. And then I would say like super rural markets where it's really like population density of like 200 people. Like right now, we're recruiting out of a location called Colby. Colby, and it's really hard. So like some parts of like Nebraska are really, really challenging. Some parts of Kansas are really, really challenging because there's more cows than there are people. And so, you can't get the cows in the seed. So you got to think of really creative ways. But one of the things that they can do is BrightFlag does a free market analysis. We were the first to market. Other people are doing it now, and I take that as a compliment that other people find it valuable and now are offering it. But we were first to market to offer the market analysis. And what we'll do is we'll look at your market or potential markets that you're thinking about buying in, and we'll tell you the good and the bad and the ugly. We'll tell you what are the benefits. We'll tell you what are going to be the challenges based on those markets, and give you that information, whether you buy and decide to like do recruiting yourself or whatever. That's free to use as a service, just for us to give back to contractors. So that's a really good starting point for them, and there's no cost associated with it. So.
And I would really recommend doing that. I mean, every single time I've looked to expand into another location, I've always reached out to Toni and her team to ask about the market analysis and understand what are contractors paying, and also understand how contractors are paying, because not every market pays cents per mile. And that's what I typically am used to. I remember having a conversation with Toni about Scranton, Pennsylvania, when I went to Scranton, and it was a very different market. It was paid by the hour, even for people who are over the road driving for 11 hours. They wanted to be paid by the hour, and there were some other nuances. And so I highly recommend that. And then also talking to an insurance broker so you can understand what are the workers' comp situations when you're going into a new market, because workers' comp can make a big difference to your margins.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know how many people have pointed your way over the year, Toni, just because, sure, out between Alex and I, we've seen a lot of different markets, but one, we haven't seen all of them, not even close. And two, these markets change so much year over year. So knowing just what the current conditions are, what you should be offering, what to expect is such an important differentiator and game changer when you're entering a new market, like Alex is saying. So I can't recommend that as enough as a first step when you're trying to figure out what your recruiting strategy look like, what your benefits and pay structure may need to look like in an area you've never been.
Well, the other thing I want to mention, because I've noticed a trend here, when we started talking like 5 years ago, Toni, it was like Noki was the worst market to recruit in. And I happen to be in Noki. And then it's now Memphis and Olive Branch. Is it something about me that you just don't like? Is that what it is?
I just think that it's really strange that you drew that correlation. I think you're the only one. Yeah, no, it's totally you, Alex. Like, just transparently, I've always hated you, and so this has been my opportunity to just have a platform. So here I am.
Well, it's funny. I don't find it hard to recruit in my markets, but I've learned what the nuances are. But maybe it's because, I don't know. Maybe it's just like the alpha kilo, like preeminence in those markets. That's
I
what
think it is. I think no, but seriously, to that point, like didn't stop being silly for a second. Your brand is important, and I don't think enough contractors understand that. They think, oh, I'm just 5 trucks. I'm just 10 trucks. Like, why would brand recognition be important? But it is. And getting reviews to go onto like your Facebook page, like those things are important because I mean, BrightFlag has over 550 five-star reviews, not just from drivers, but from not just from clients, but also from drivers, right? And so I use that as a selling technique all the time when I'm talking to drivers and they're like, well, why should we go with your client? And I said, because this is the way that we treat our drivers, and we don't work with clients that don't adhere to those same standards and ethics and morals and values. And so we're big enough where we can turn down clients that we don't align with. And so we're not going to put you into a job that's not going to treat you right. And so I can use that as leverage the same way a client or a contractor can use that for leverage. So I think your brand does speak for itself. And I think that, I mean, Alex, there's people that come to you all the time that want to work for you and you don't even have opportunities. You're just like, I'll put you on my wait list. I remember that. Do you remember?
Yes, yeah, I do. I actually have a long wait list right now. I will say, and this is important, like, and contractors don't seem to understand this. It's important for you to think about what are your standards going to be and adhere to your standards. Like it's much more risky to your business to hire somebody that's sketchy and you're unsure of because they can ruin your reputation, they can ruin your relationship with FedEx, and they can get into an accident and put either your business or other people's lives at risk. So for me, we are pretty strict on who we'll hire. And if they don't pass snuff, even if they're already approved in the system, I still make them do a road test. They still have to pass stuff with my manager. And then on top of that, any driver that doesn't give me 2 weeks notice, we refuse to hire back. So if they don't give and that's another thing to think about. Like if they're unwilling to give their current employer a 2 weeks notice, we don't hire them. And if they are unwilling to not give us a 2 weeks notice, we put them on our do not hire list. And there are a lot of drivers and I don't knock them for it, who want to become owner operators. And so they'll, save up enough money and they'll try to go out and buy their big rig and then try to go out and hang their own shingle for a couple of years. And some of them are really successful and some of them it doesn't work. The guys who don't work, I always bring them back. I'm more than willing to help them become their own entrepreneur, their own small business owner. If they can be successful and they use me as a reference or use me as a resource, that's awesome because you know what? They're going to refer people to me as well. So
we do that same thing with drivers that will apply for a job. And if we don't have a position for them available, or we have a position, but it's not really what they're looking for, we'll explain it to them that same way. Like, hey, we don't have anything right now. I mean, I could fit you into this seat, but I think in like 3 months, you're going to be looking again. I just don't think it's the right fit. And they're surprised by that, right? It's almost like the challenger approach, but except I really don't want them to take the job. Um, but it's the same thing because, if I know what they want, I can help steer them in the right direction. And guess what? If that previous opportunity or the next opportunity they take doesn't work out, they always call me back or call somebody on my team back and say, hey, Miss Toni, like, I know you didn't have something that was like a solo home daily AM run, but do you have something available now because that other opportunity didn't work out? And sometimes I do. And so that's great. And then they refer their friends to call BrightFlag because they know we're going to do right by them. So yeah, it all just goes hand in hand. It's like if you treat people the way you want to be treated, it comes back tenfold. And that's a really great way how you build your business and the culture and the way that people think of your brand.
Yep, I agreed.
Okay, so I think just as a last question here, lots of people either if they haven't gotten into Linehaul or if they've just done solos, their biggest fear on the recruiting side is getting into the team side of the equation. Any advice or kind of help you can give people who are really worried about hiring for teams?
It's not as scary as you think it is. I mean, I would say it is intimidating because, and you don't know, you have to learn your market. Some markets you want to hire husband and wives, or some markets you want to hire brothers. In some markets, you just want to match two people up together. There are always going to be horror stories. You're going to have horror stories anywhere. I mean, there are some, if you get to spend some time with contractors, there are some great stories about a team abandoning a truck somewhere. Or like, I cannot tell you the number of times I've had to wake up a team driver, in a location of ill repute because they fell asleep in that location and they've run up a tab and can't get out now. So you have all sorts of weird stuff happen. trust me, it's not that bad. You find two drivers. You don't need to even find husband and wife or brothers or relatives. You can just find two drivers who get along. The biggest thing is just having a process where your manager is going to interview those drivers and understand what they're like. Because what you don't want to do is put an OCD driver with a messy driver. That is a recipe for disaster.
Yeah. Or a daytime driver that is squirrely at night. You can't put
Yeah.
two daytime drivers together. Like when someone tells you they're uncomfortable driving at night, believe them.
Yeah.
Don't make them drive at night, you know?
So,
So yeah, it's the process that you're talking about, having a really good system to say, okay, this person is allergic to dogs, this person isn't, this person smokes, this person doesn't, this person likes nights, this person likes days. It's really just learn. I mean, you get lucky with like a husband and wife, or a dad and son, or a brother, sister, whatever culmination can come to BFFs, which I've seen go sideways really fast. They weren't BFFs after a while. But anyway, but a lot of it's matchmaking. And if you know the right questions to ask, and then you have, when those people become available to actually be seated, you have a discussion with the manager, you interview them together, you see how that dynamic works. And if like they're not compatible, then you find somebody else to run with them. I mean,
yeah.
it's really not that challenging.
Like right now I'm looking to break up a team. I mean, they're working fine, they're getting along, but I know that there's friction points. One of them is very old school, has a very methodical process, things that, everybody needs to show up at the yard an hour early to do a pre-trip inspection and have a discussion about weather conditions on the road. And the other one's like, I want to show up a half an hour early, do my pre-trip inspection, and then just crawl into the bunk and not talk to my partner anymore. So it's like, okay, I got to find, what am I looking for? What am I going to find? So, I mean, I'm in the process right now of breaking up this team and putting together new teammates, which is fine. It happens all the time. I'm just prepared for it. I'm always, like we talked about earlier, I'm always recruiting teams. I always have a shingle out saying I'm looking for team drivers. Is it expensive? It's a cost of doing business. It doesn't cost all that much to have an open ad on Indeed on a constant basis. I do a lot of referrals. But it allows me to take advantage of opportunities when there are, so I don't ever have, like, one of the things I don't like to do, I don't mind declining a solo run if I'm shorthanded because too many guys are on vacation or whatever. I really hate declining a team run because that's potentially $10,000 or $15,000 worth of declines that you just took that week because they haven't run. And that's a meaningful amount of money. So I always like to make sure I have something to backfill, or, God forbid a driver got made inactive by First Advantage, because that never happens.
Never.
Never happens that a driver gets made inactive by First Advantage. So just having like a bench or, people that you can call in and bring in is important.
Yeah, and I was going to just say risk versus reward, right? The higher the risk, the higher the reward. So teams are making exponentially more money. And I mean, we're entrepreneurs, right? If we don't love a little bit of thrill and a little bit of fear, why are we doing this? So I'm like a go big or go home, all chips in, like run those teams. Plus, there's a lot of different opportunities that you can, a lot of different options that you can utilize to find teams. Like I think ELDP is a very underutilized program. I know tons and tons of contractors that are using ELDP very successfully. Yes, it's a higher time commitment, but when you bring somebody in and you teach them how to be a driver, like you're not getting bad habits from previous jobs. Like you are like cultivating them from like inception, like a baby, and you are imprinting on them like a mama duck, and those little ducklings will follow you everywhere. And so I love some ELDP. And anyway, if anybody's interested, contact me.
Yeah, we can have another conversation on ELDP because there's a lot of notes about how to set up a good program, how to recruit for it, how to train up your lead drivers to train appropriately. So that's a whole,
how to pay it,
that's a whole,
how to make it. Yeah,
that's a whole nother session that we can unpack. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. I have a very successful ELDP program, but it takes a lot of focus and effort to make sure that you're employing it correctly. But I agree, ELDP is a best kept secret out there.
Yeah, and I don't think we should gatekeep it anymore. I think I should be back on. We should talk about ELDP.
Yeah,
I'll bring some more swag, So.
No, I think it is great. I mean, you're right. It's something that people don't use as often as they should, but you're also right that it's often a series of steps you have to do. and build properly so that you do it right. Because I talk to people all the time. It's like, oh, that sounds great. How do I do it? And because it's not just just click a button and you're ready to go. There are some things to do, but it can be a great funnel and a great way to have the right talent and really build loyalty. And like you said, build kind of the model of employee that you want for your business.
Yeah, for sure.
Perfect. So thank you guys so much. That was a fantastic conversation. Really appreciate all the back and forth in the stories. So for everybody who's on here, again, if you have any follow-up questions, feel free to ask them. If you're looking for either of these guys' contact info, just reach out and we'll make sure to share it. Other than that, thanks everybody for being on, and thank you both Alex and Toni for being here. And sounds like we'll see you on a future one.
Definitely. Always looking forward to speaking with Toni.
Yeah, perfect.
I really don't hate you, by the way, for everybody watching.
Okay, hey guys, thanks.
All right, see you guys.